welcome. This is the Indianapolis Area Contractor Mini Workshop. My name is Will Watrous from StructureM, and happy to be spending a little bit of time with you this afternoon. It's an honor to once again partner with James Hardy, which is such a top-notch, such an excellent company, and Josh and his team there at James Hardy too. Set aside a little bit of time to help contractors navigate these ridiculously crazy times that we're in between COVID and the elections. There's a lot going on, and we want to see high quality contractors thrive, especially as we go into 2021. And I like to call it post-COVID 2021, because I'm so hopeful that this will just be a bad memory at some point. But the idea here is to create some space for you to think strategically about your business. And so we'll do that. We're also going to share some very practical, technical advice and tips. We have such a fantastic lineup for you today. And this is a workshop. We named it a workshop very intentionally. It's not so much designed to be a presentation only. It's really focused on answering your questions. If you'll remember, when you registered for this, actually, you answered a bunch of questions. And so we've designed the content to answer those specific questions. We'll be putting your questions up on the screen and answering those. In addition to that, this is also designed to be interactive. There is a chat window. If you'll click on the chat on your Zoom down at the bottom, it'll pop up a new window. And right in there, throw your comments, throw your questions as we go. We might hit them in stride and hit pause in the middle of some comments, or we might kind of wait till the end of a session. But we really do want to tailor this to helping you in your situation be smart with designing your year 2021 for your business. This is not a sales pitch. You are not going to be sold. We're not trying to get you to hire us or anybody else at this point. We are really trying to add value to the industry, to you and to your company, to James Hardy. It's been a strategic partnership we've had for a long time, and it's an honor, again, to be partnered. Having said that, last time we did a previous workshop last week, and afterward we had contractors saying, okay, so what is StructureM actually? Who are you guys actually? And I want to at least do that due diligence to give you an idea of who it is that's putting this whole thing on. If you go to StructureM.com and you click on services, this is what we do. So we have something called the Growth Accelerator Program. It's designed for contractors to grow 15 to 50% per year. That's what we're honored to serve contractors all over the country, from some smaller guys to some of the biggest and most successful, specifically James Hardy elite preferred contractors that are out there. And so we do that with messaging and websites and SEO, digital ads, social media, online reviews, automation. All of this stuff comes together. And also, this is important. We're going to be hitting on some of this. We also hit sales and operations, and also finance, which is what Jeff is going to speak to at length. But you need to be making more money, and you need to be keeping that money. And that's what Jeff has designed his systems to do. So that's just real quick who StructureM is and what this is all about. And as I mentioned, we've got some fantastic people on the call today. I'll just mention briefly here, yours truly, Bruce Dell is the COO of StructureM. So he oversees a group of marketers who specialize in the contracting industry and have done so for many years. So whether it's digital advertising, social media, web design, all of that stuff, he oversees our team who does all of that. So he has a ton of experience. For over 8 years, he's been consulting with contractors and helping them be more successful with their marketing. Hillary is our account executive. She's been in this industry for about 8 years as well, marketing and sales, tons of experience. David Galati is going to be hopping on a little bit later. David has grown multiple multi-million-dollar companies in the home improvement space. He also has a ton of franchising experience. He's worked with some really big companies, and he's going to speak to sales and operations. And then Jeff Prager is going to speak to your finances. And Jeff has been a CPA for over 40 years. He has grown multiple multi-million-dollar companies in the home improvement space and construction space. And I'll intro him a little bit more later. But that's who the lineup is for today. I want to especially give a shout out to Josh Brandon. Thank you for being on the call today. Josh, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just as we jump in, I wanted to thank especially Will, Bruce, and Hillary, Hillary specifically for getting this set up for the indie guys. For those of you here, just my overall impression of StructureM from my time at Hardy. I know when we start to have the conversation around digital providers that it can be a little intimidating, it can be a little hectic, and there's a good chance most of you on the call have probably had a bad experience with somebody that probably does something similar to StructureM. I would ask you to take some of those apprehensions, put them a little bit on the back burner. I have the benefit of having a little behind the curtain look at some of the relationships and partnerships that these guys have across the country with some of our elite preferreds that sometimes you guys don't get to see being here in the indie market. And I will tell you, across the board, not just with digital people, but businesses designed to help your business, I don't think there are very many no-brainers. I think StructureM is a no-brainer. So whether you decide to hire them as a result of this call, or whether you just decide to take some of the market insight and advice that they have with some of the pre-existing knowledge they have with Indy, I think this is going to be well worth your time. And I think these guys are top notch. So again, thank you for coming, and thank you guys for putting this on for us.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, Josh. And again, the chat is there for you. So throw your questions in there as we go. They'll probably start to come up as we go. But I want to first kick off with Bruce. I mentioned he's the COO. And he, as I said, has worked with a team of seasoned marketers in the contracting space for a long time. He's also been brought in by James Hardy Corporate into the headquarters on multiple occasions to train James Hardy reps all over the country on how to support contractors when it comes to marketing and sales and growing their revenue year after year. So Bruce has led several training sessions at Hardy headquarters and has a ton of experience. And so Bruce, why don't you share your screen and take us away? We're going to start by talking about lead generation and lead quality. And then after Bruce, Jeff Prager is going to speak to all the financial and cash flow management questions. And after that, Dave Galati is going to speak to operations and sales. Go ahead, Bruce.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well on this Wednesday. Look forward to sharing with you for a couple of minutes about marketing. As Will said, we've had a lot of great experience working with home improvement contractors and specifically James Hardy contractors. In fact, our second client 9 years ago was a Hardy contractor. That's how we got into it. And so we've seen a lot and experienced a lot. And so I'm excited to share some of those insights from a marketing perspective with you. And again, I'm got one eye on the chat here. So if you have a question, you can jump in. But the format is I'm going to go through the questions that were submitted, and we had 3 excellent questions that was asked. And so I'm going to be going through those ones. The first one is how to accurately track conversions. The second one is how to attract larger scale jobs. And then the third one is how to get more Hardy leads. So great questions. But we asked this with a number of different, we're doing this workshop with a number of different cities and areas. And overwhelmingly, the biggest question or the biggest marketing challenge that we hear is about lead gen. And so to kick it off, I wanted to show you this fantastic resource that we put together. I think it was about 2 years ago, but we revamped it this past year, and it's called the Contractor Revenue Accelerator. And as a follow-up to this call in an email, we're going to send you a link that you can go ahead and download this. And this is a fantastic resource because it really goes into the strategy as well as some of the tactics, but the strategy that you need for a comprehensive, sound marketing system that so it doesn't just go after this and say, what's the latest thing on Facebook, or what should we do about this? It really looks across the gamut of digital advertising and helps you build a consistent and long-lasting marketing machine. The guide looks at your messaging, how to really differentiate in your messaging. It looks at your website, what are the elements that should be part of your website, what kind of content really helps social media so you can improve your Google rankings, reviews, paid ads. It really is a fantastic resource. So we want to give that out to you if you have not yet seen that. And so we'll share that link. And then my main piece of advice regarding this is take a look at it, and then really entrust somebody in your team who oversees marketing, or maybe it's a marketing agency, whether it's us or whoever, and show them this, and hopefully that person or that group of people can really own the whole strategy when it comes to your marketing. You know, a lot of times what we see with contractors is, oh, I have a web guy, and I have a PPC guy, and I have an SEO guy, and I have a cousin who does this and dabbles in that, and no one's talking to who, and so you get this very disjointed system, and then people wonder, why is it not working? And the PPC guy is saying, yeah, it's because of the web guy, and the web guy's like, no, the SEO guy, and you're not getting any resolution. And so having a single agency, a single person, whatever that, who oversees your digital marketing and who can actually execute on all these levels and get all these people talking is going to be critical. So that's kind of what I wanted to start off with. But let's jump into some of your excellent questions that you had. And the first one was how to accurately track conversions. Personally, I was so excited when I saw this question because it's my soapbox when it comes to contractors. Because so often I don't see this done very well. And it can be very intimidating. And so the two big steps I see when it comes to accurately tracking conversions. One is to get accurate tracking, the software that you need to be able to accurately track and report your exact leads. What lead is coming from what source? Where did they touch? And so you get the information in that you need to be able to do this. And then the second part is to get the information out, which is closing the loop and actually getting an ROI on your different marketing channels. And so let's jump into those. So the first one is getting the information, is having accurate tracking and reporting. Too often we see that especially when it comes to paid ads, you'll get a report that says, you got 5 leads from these ads. They don't tell you what leads, it's just 5. You got 3 phone calls and 2 web forms, and they give you a fantastic looking number saying, you know, your cost per lead is X, but they don't tell you which leads came from which. And so ensuring that whoever is providing those marketing services, whether it be paid ads, whether it be Facebook ads, whatever the case is, they're giving you the actual lead data. And tracking is going to be essential to that. You know, we have a piece of software that we use for all of our contractors. It's called CallRail. We can throw that in the chat. And CallRail is fantastic, and it really allows you to see from a phone call, a web form, whatever the case, where they have come in the chain. Did they come from a Facebook ad? Did they come from Google organic search? Did they come from Yelp? And it shows you the actual data. So when it comes to the phone calls, it gives you a recording of the call so you can listen to it. It tells you what the phone number was, if that phone number is associated with a name, how long that phone call was, and you can then attribute that call to that lead. And then the same thing on a web form, tells you the name, the address that that person used on the form, where they came from, again, giving you the actuals. And so tracking and reporting in that way, and having something like CallRail or the company that's providing these services give you those actuals is crucial for you to be able to take that second step. And this is often what we see when it comes to the second step, right? When you have a phone call or you're talking to a prospect or a customer and you ask that golden question, how did you hear about us? And you get typical responses like, we found you in Google, or we found you on the internet. Oh, that's a big and scary place, and that doesn't help you. And so helping train your team to mine further down that information, using that data, the tracking reporting to close the loops, and be able to associate each lead with the source that they came from is crucial. And so that's kind of the output here, is with somebody on your team actually going back and closing the loop, because sometimes that loop is fairly long depending on your industry. But for siding, it could be weeks, days, months later where they actually become a sale, from when they first became a lead to the sale. And so it's going to take somebody to come back and close that loop and actually calculate a return on investment. Was the amount of money that you put in to that source, whether it be, for example, Google Ads, or Facebook ads, or Yelp advertising, or SEO. Was that money more or less than the value that you got from those customers? And when you're able to calculate those, you're able to make such better decisions about, how do I adjust those? Do I stop those? Do I do those more? And so closing the loop on a return on investment is essential for someone on your team to do on a regular basis. And a side note on this, as a company that does paid ads for our clients, the feedback we get from this process is invaluable. It's so valuable. When they can come to us and say, here's what we're seeing with the actual leads from Facebook ads. We're seeing this kind of customer, but we want this kind of customer, and we're able to adjust and get better results, better quality of lead based on that feedback that comes from that information. I wanted to do a little segue and talk a little bit about the phone. It doesn't come directly into answering your question, but it does affect this. It does affect the number of leads and the quality of leads you get, and it's regarding the phone. And this is soapbox number 2. We obviously track our phone, all the phone calls that we see for our clients from paid advertising. We listen to those calls and hear them, and it's scary the amount of calls that we see sometimes that do not get answered, or they're getting forwarded to the owner's cell phone, and they're on a job, or they're on the top of a roof, or whatever, and they let it go to voicemail. And the reality is, people don't leave voicemails. They're moving on to the next. They want to talk to someone now, and if we don't get hold of you, we're going down the list of contractors that is long and vast. So please, please, please answer the phone. Have someone in your team who answers the phone, or if it's a form lead, is available to call that lead back fast. That there's definitely a relation. The longer that a time goes on from when they submitted a web form to when you call them back and then become a customer is directly proportional. And so making sure that that person can call fast and then is trained to convert. Their number one job is to get a conversion in terms of a estimate or a consultation. So being able to answer typical objections, being able to give them a script so that they can position your customer well, so your services well, is vitally important. And if you don't have someone on your team, there's plenty of really good call answering services that we can recommend that you can give them a script. And again, their agents are trained to represent your business well and to get the information for a consultation that you need. And my last piece of advice here as an owner of a company is, if you have someone on your team who is answering the phone, listen to some of those calls and help train them. When we listen to some of these phone calls, the good ones do it really well and the bad ones are so scary. And it's almost like they're doing them a favor by calling. What do you want? Oh, no, we don't do that. Sorry, goodbye. Instead of, we don't do that, but here's what we can do, and really trying to work with the person on the phone. So listen to some of those calls, and it'll help you with a wealth of information. All right, so I wanted to jump in with the second question, and that is how to attract larger scale jobs. And I wanted to give 3 things that we see will help you accomplish this. First one is to instill confidence by showcasing your experience and your capability in this area. If you want to attract larger scale jobs and you've been able to get 1 or 2 of those, that is what you want to promote. And there's different ways you can do that. You can build case studies or featured projects around those, really showcasing, again, we have done this. We've done this project. Here's where it came from. Here's what we were able to do. Here's the results. And here's what the homeowner or the company had to say about it. Building a featured project that you can promote and as in your sales process and your marketing process is key. And then building your reviews and your testimonials around these larger scale jobs is going to be important. It's all about instilling the confidence that they know that you are the right person to be able to handle larger scale jobs. And so building that portfolio. The second one is to offer and promote financing. All too often, we don't see contractors offer financing, or if they do, it's an afterthought. It's only something that only if the client or the lead asks about. But it's important that for every job that you do, you offer financing and you promote it. So you promote it in your website, you promote it in your ads. Financing can become an advantage of your company over another company. And so I know James Hardy has some great partnerships with some financing companies, and recommend that financing becomes a core part of your marketing, your sales process. And then the third thing is to differentiate yourself. Differentiate yourself from the competition, from everybody else. What is unique about you? What value do you provide to that client so they want to choose you? It's so easy to blend in, and we see this all too often with contractors where they use that blah blah language, we often call it, in their marketing. We're BBB accredited. We value honesty and service. We have top quality products, and it's like everyone says that. As a homeowner, there's no way to differentiate anybody from anybody, and so then it comes down to price, and you don't want to compete on price. And so finding a way to make yourself stand out and unique by differentiating yourself, asking you and your team and everyone in your company these questions. What makes you different from your competitors? What makes you better than your competitors? What value do you provide that others don't? Asking those hard questions, and we're going to give you a resource at the end here that really helps you unpack this and discover this for yourself. But when you're able to differentiate yourself and then promote that differentiation on your marketing is the second step to that. But then you start getting things like, I want to give you some examples. We send you daily video updates, so you always know what's going on in your job. Not everyone does that. That's something unique. We will never sell you things that you don't need. That's getting closer. We hear that a lot, but again, showcasing why is that a value to the homeowner. Manufacturers use us as examples for other contractors to follow. Wow, that stands out. When you can say that the suppliers use you as that example, that helps you stand out. So we'll give you the resource, and it's a great way for you to be able to discover how you can differentiate yourself from the competition. All right, let's jump into the third question that we have, which is how to get more hardy leads. And without knowing kind of the context or what you're doing, I'll talk broadly on this, and hopefully I will give you it'll answer your question. But essentially, there's two ways to get hardy jobs. The one way is somebody who knows that they want hardy on their home, and you're competing against other hardy contractors. The second way is for a customer who may not know what they want, or they want another product, and you're able to show the value, and you're able to upsell them and to hardy. So those are essentially the two ways you're getting hardy leads and hardy jobs. And so and give you a few tips on each. The first one, again, going back to the differentiator, is if you're competing with other hardy contractors, what makes you unique? What makes you different? Why should the homeowner choose you? Is going to be key here. So going back to the differentiator. You also want to showcase your experience. Once again, we see this predominantly when we have contractors who are new to hardy, but there's a big competitor in the business. They've done 500 hardy jobs, they've got all these things, and they've only done one or two. And they're saying, how do we get more hardy? How do we showcase that? And so building that portfolio, building that evidence, case studies, photos, before and after photos, videos, reviews is so crucial, because you want to get to the hump where you can instill that confidence of, hey, they've gone from 2 hardy jobs to they've done 50. Once you've done 50, I'm confident. It doesn't really matter to me if you've done 50 or 100. You know what you're doing, and you have that confidence. And so those are pointers with regard to the first way. The second way is similar in terms of you want to provide value and you want to provide financing because it's all about upselling them, showing them the value of a hardy product compared to a different product or a different service. And so through financing, through showing the value of how James Hardie siding is a good cost value for money option, may not be the cheapest, but it's the best value for money, is critical in that way. And again, gathering evidence through reviews, through before and after pictures, through featured projects. But how do you get in front of more people? I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about paid advertising and how it's really gone from not being an option to from being an option to not being an option. Google is changing where it's really not an option to not participate. They're constantly pushing down the free organic listings in Google. And so if you're not doing any kind of paid advertising, especially on Google, maybe it's time to relook at that in terms of being able to attract more jobs. And I want to talk a little bit about Google ads and Facebook ads and Google Guaranteed. Now, it's a great way to target James Hardie related keywords, people who are looking directly for James Hardie, and make sure you're coming up at the top for those results. And then once they do come to your website, tracking them and following them through retargeting, through Facebook retargeting, through Google retargeting is essential. You've paid all that money, you've done all that work to get them to your website. Follow them around with a billboard, keep them at top of the mind, so that they can be reminded of you and your services. And Google Guaranteed is another new option that is important. Google Guaranteed or Google Local Service ads, you may have seen in your industry, are starting to show up at the very top. This is what they look like for certain services. So this is a screenshot I took yesterday of siding contractor Indianapolis, which is probably your number one keyword, or one of your number one keywords when it comes to people finding your business. And it's these kind of card ads at the top. And you can see that these three, they rotate over three. But what you don't see here is these are actually the only three companies that are participating in siding local service ads. Siding is relatively new. It's only come out in the last 2 months. It's been open for windows and roofing for a number of months, but siding is relatively new. So this is a great way to make sure that you are coming up at the very top of Google. And because the competition is low, the cost per lead is relatively small. It's different from paid ads in terms of it's not pay-per-click. These are pay-per-lead ads, and you get exclusive. They only come to you, so it's not like they fill out a form and it gets sent to 3 or 4 contractors, and everyone's trying to get hold of them. They choose you, and they choose you often based on your reviews. So that's another part that's important. And the nice thing about it is there's a qualification process with Google Local Service ads. You have to be insured. You have to have a background check to your owners. You have to have a business license in certain counties and states. And because you provide that, Google's able to put that Google Guaranteed badge next to it. And what we're seeing is a lot of these are very high purchase intent leads. These are people who are ready to buy, ready to engage in a conversation versus I'm in research mode. And so if you have not yet done Google Guaranteed ads or Google Local Service ads, and you're not one of these three, or you'd maybe do it for another service, it's something that I would highly recommend. And so, yeah, that's more about just getting leads in general, and getting therefore more hardy leads is the result there. So thank you so much. I know there was a quick question. Just Josh, you were asked about local service ads. Yep. Again, you want to jump on this before it gets wildly popular. It's still a bid. It's still in a bidding system. So the fewer the competition, the less the competition, the lower the bids. So we're seeing in some markets lead costs for a siding replacement at the $50, $60 mark. And that's going to go up as more people jump on here. And so you want to be on the front end of that versus the tail end of that. And Google's in the business of promoting this more and more. 97% of Google's revenue comes from advertising. And so more and more, unfortunately, as I said, pay to play, they're gonna, this is no longer an option to participate in paid ads. And so do it wisely, and it can really help your business grow. All right, are there any other questions? Hopefully I answered everyone. My email address is here. It's bruce@structurem.com. If you had a follow-up question or you wanted to ask me anything more, please shoot me an email. I'll happy to talk more and promise not to sell you, but just want to provide some good value for you. So.
Hey, Bruce, this is Josh. You mentioned it briefly, and I wanted to circle back on it because it's a conversation I have in just about every office I go into. But
yeah,
in terms of the Google ads, what role do reviews play, and what kind of emphasis should contractors be putting on getting a 5-star review from every single customer?
Josh, great question. Thank you. Reviews are critical, because again, that's a differentiator when it comes to local service ads, because they can't see your message. They can't see your website. They just see a card with the number of reviews you have. So if I see three contractors next to me on local service ads, and the only way I can really differentiate and choose is on reviews, that's the number one thing. And then it's part of someone's natural research cycle. As they're looking for contractors and they're going to go to 3, 4, 5 different contractors, one of the first things that you do, just think about your own purchasing behavior, is you go and look at reviews. And so instilling a company-wide system for getting reviews, where if you make this a priority as a business and it's something you talk about all the time to your sales team, your project staff, how many reviews did we get this week, guys? What's the review count? And they know it's important to you, it'll become important to them. And we've seen some businesses actually incentivize their team. Now, you can't incentivize the client to leave a review, but you can incentivize your team saying, hey, if you go on 5 jobs and every time someone leaves a Google review, because that's your job, you'll get a bonus or whatever the case is. That's really helped them drive home the importance of reviews and get those from the customers. So definitely reviews are so important, and such a quick win in terms of the results are instantaneous. So, all right, I don't see any other questions there, Will.
Awesome. And I would just also throw out there, Josh, you are obviously very aware of this, but contractors.jameshardy.com is the directory of contractors. So I go to the jameshardy. If I'm serious, I'm going to put out 20, 30, 50, 80 grand for siding on my home, I'm going to check out the Hardy affiliated or approved contractors in my area. I'm going to go there, and this website is going to show me like a ranking order based on reviews, based on the little badges and their contractor elite preferred status and so on and so forth. So if you want more Hardy leads, I would make sure your online profiles are maxed out. You've got the right information. You have as many badges as you can have, as many as guild quality reviews as you can have out there. Best foot forward so that those reviews get funneled to you instead of your competitor. Awesome, and thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. I want to introduce Jeff Prager here. I'm going to pull up just a quick slide on Jeff. I'm so thrilled to have him on the call today. Let me make sure this is big enough so you can see it. All right, can you see that? All right, so Jeff Prager is a CEO, CFO, CPA, and a business owner. He has owned businesses in several different industries and had great results and successful exits from those businesses. Strauss Homes in Colorado from 0 to 26 million, Gateway American Property 0 to 150 million. He was the founding partner of Ashworth Golf Clothing Accessories, which I think is really interesting. He's also written several books. And so I'm thrilled to have Jeff come on the call today. Jeff, thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen here, and why don't you start hitting cash flow and finance with us?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. I've been having troubles with the audio for a few seconds. I'm sure all of you want to listen to an accountant, so I won't let you down. Let's start there. Okay, so there were four questions that came out of the survey that I want to address with you. One is, why am I working harder for less money? The second one is, how come I never have money in the bank when I need it? The third one is, what do I do about collections? And the fourth one is, I'm losing customers because of my backlog. Now, that normally is not an accounting question, and David is going to have a different twist than I do on the same question if he follows true to form. So I'd like to get started now. The first question, why do I work harder and not make any more money? Well, there are basically three challenges that most business owners face. The first one is, there never seems to be enough money in the bank when I need it. In reality, that's one of two problems. The first one that you're going to tackle, and the most natural one, is going for profit. But cash flow and profit are two different conversations, which I'll point to as we go further. It's one of my biggest messaging. The challenge is to know, hey, why am I missing my cash, and what am I going to do about it? What are my next steps? The second one, you're not a financial expert, and you probably don't want to be one. But here's the reality, and I'll point to this in a slide or two. Financial statements do not tell you the whole story. Plus, they're not written in a language we business owners understand. And I mean that literally, we do not understand it. And your accountant or bookkeeper are not being paid to help you improve profit and cash flow. They're just geared for getting the reports out and saving you taxes, not making you money. And most people need a bridge between accounting speak and what we speak, or common sense, if you will. The third one is, you might be in a catch-22. Let me explain that. You need more money to grow. But to grow, you need more money. So naturally, what most of us do is we work harder by doing more ourselves. However, if you solve the cash flow problem, you could potentially solve all the other problems. So there's a reason your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror. Where you're headed is more important than what you left behind. Let me go back to the accountant and bookkeeper. Think about this. You're driving down the highway. Your accountant and bookkeeper are in the back seat, and they're telling you where you've been, and that's about it. You're driving the car, your CFO is sitting next to you, and the CFO is probably the only one other than you who's looking at the whole business structure, the whole business funnel. And I'll explain more about that in a slide or two, okay? So we're looking at the whole business funnel, and we're telling you, here's where you need to go, and here's how you need to get there. So we're there sitting right next to you. Another concept, and somebody brought this up. I think, Will, you wrote a comment. No one's connecting the dots between your lead source and your revenue, and no one's connecting the dots between your revenue and your cash flow. Okay, so how do you get all the way from revenue to cash flow? Well, we found that in every company I've gone through, these are the 8 key drivers. Now, let me tell you how I got there. When I started Strauss Homes with my partner, Steve Strauss, what happened is We were upside down within 2 years by $1 million. That was $1 million we didn't have. And so I'm losing sleep trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? After all, I'm supposed to be a hotshot CPA. And realize, as I look through all my past clients, that the successful businesses were not just using financial reports. And over time, I developed these 8 numbers, and they work in every organization, okay? Your number of leads to measure your marketing effectiveness. Are you getting quality leads? By that, I mean, number 2, are they converting to revenue? Are they converting to revenue? Number 3, customer retention rate. Are you keeping the customers that you used to have? In other words, are they giving you referrals, or are they coming back to you? Now, a lot of people in the construction industry think about one and done. But like in my home building business, we figured out that there was a certain demographic that if we went back to after 3 years, actually we do that. We'd go back after 3 years, send the community salesperson over to their house with a bouquet of flowers, a dinner, a basket of fruit, or a box of chocolates. And we go, we want to thank you for living in a Strauss community for 3 years. When you bought this house, you had X amount of children, and you were employed, and your spouse was employed doing this. Has anything changed? And normally something changed, and we were able to move them up to a bigger house. Now, that was maybe only 5 sales a year, and we were averaging about 137 a year, but we didn't have to pay realtor commissions, which were on average 15 grand a house. So take 15, multiply it by 5, and ask yourself, would that buy you a good dinner? And I hope your answer is yes. Then number of transactions per customer. What else can you offer besides just citing? Is there anything else that you could bundle that would actually cost you less to bundle and would increase the value of your transaction, which is number 5, average transaction value. Now, those 5 indicators lead to revenue. That's your connection to revenue, which is your first thing in a financial statement. But a financial statement doesn't tell you how you got your revenue. Then you take away your variable cost, the cost of materials, subcontractors, supplies, whatever is variable. In other words, if you don't have a job, you don't have the cost, and that gives you gross profit. Now, you can increase your gross profit by raising your prices, selling more, and or talking about efficiency, cutting out the number of inputs into your project. How do you use less panels of siding? Is there a way to be more efficient? Are you wasting it? Your subcontractors. Then you could go into your cost, and then you could go into technology, efficiency, and systems. Then you get into net profit, which is gross profit minus the basic 3 areas are payroll, marketing, and other overhead. And they're fixed for a reason. Whether you sell 1 unit or 100 units, it doesn't make any difference. You have the obligation to pay it. That gets you to net profit. But net profit is not the same as cash flow. And I will show you that difference in the next series of slides, I think. The second question is, how do I get cash when I need it? Now, what people were saying is getting a line of, how do I get a line of credit? Their finance companies are clunky. They're outdated application systems. And I'm in my early years. So let's talk about it. There are 2 ways to raise money, internally and externally. Over the long run, you must raise money internally, which is through your sales and operations over the long term. But think about Amazon, think about Apple, think about Microsoft, think about Google. They all lost money in the beginning. That was external financing. I'll talk about that in a second. But here was my biggest aha when I opened my businesses, is the way I think as a business owner is far more simplistic than an accountant thinks. Follow along with me. Think about a trough. Money is coming in and money is going out. You as a business owner, think about money coming in, money coming out. This was one of my bigger ahas when I started running my own businesses. Okay, it seems obvious. Your money comes in from product sales, raising debt, or getting equity. You put in the money or you get investors. That's simple. 3 sources: sales, debt, and equity. That's it. There are no others. And it goes out for cost of goods sold, your variable cost, your overhead, and your salaries, which I hope when you budget, your salary is the #1 salary on your list. You also may have to buy assets, equipment, building, something long-term. You have to pay back the debt and maybe pay dividends to your investors. Okay, interest is in overhead. The repayment is over here. Now, if the money doesn't come in faster than it's going out, there's no money for you, which is why you're working harder for less money. Now, just imagine this dotted line here. And this is why accounting is so confusing. Some of your cash coming in and cash going out is on the profit and loss. Some of your cash coming in and cash going out is on your balance sheet. And not just small businesses, but medium businesses and very large businesses are not paying attention to this side of the equation because they don't know how. No one showed you ever what to look at, when to look at it, how to interpret it, and what to do about it. And that is a big fallacy with the accounting profession as a whole. Let me give you a more concrete example. Suppose you made $30,000. Just assume. Now, the first thing that you're going to have to do is pay taxes. Taxes don't even show up on your income statement or your balance sheet unless you're a C Corp. If you're an S Corp, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship, taxes are nowhere to be seen. That is a cash leakage. Now, another one is receivables. Now, let's assume you sell 600 grand, but you don't collect 41,000. So you made 30, you got to pay taxes, and then you got to pay, you don't collect some of your revenue. You are now approximately 23 grand in the hole in terms of your bank account. Your accountant's telling you made 30,000, you only have 20, you're negative 23. Now let's make it even worse. You pay some of your debt. Let's say you pay $9,600 of your debt. You made 30,000, you're negative approximately 33,000. That is a $63,000 swing between what you think you made and what's in your bank account. Is everybody following that? Why there's a huge disconnect between what you're thinking as a business owner and what's going on? And frankly, this is as easy as it needs to be to show you what's going on in your business. Cash flow and profit are not the same. These are coins. This is graphable. That's it. Externally, first of all, you could borrow money or raise money through equity. Let's not deal with that. But your banker or somebody investing in you sees you differently. Those are the people who read your financial statements. They look at your reputation, your assets, your strength, but they do not evaluate you the way you evaluate you. Now, if you're borrowing money, they're looking at 3 things. One is your character, your commitment, your experience, your integrity. The second thing is your capacity to repay the money they give you, whether it's short-term, a banker, or long-term, an equity investor, they want to make sure they're going to get their money back, unless they fall into three categories: friends, family, and fools. Other than that, they want to know how you're going to get paid back. Third is your net worth. What is your company worth? Whoops, I'm sorry. What is your company worth? What they're looking at is your net worth. What they're trying to figure out is how much pain can you take before you have to go bankrupt. Okay? So they're looking at the pain you could take. Then they want to look at, well, if I can't take the pain, how am I going to get paid back? And then they want to look at the economic and political environment, the social environment, and they're going to evaluate you. But here's the key concept when you're raising money. Don't ever ask for money unless you don't need it. So when I was starting my home building business, the first 10, 15 homes, we didn't have a track record. So I went to my banker and I said, here's what I have. And I had a 3-ring loose leaf notebook. This is before the days of really using PowerPoint and computers and stuff like we have today. And in it, I'd have a 3 to 10 page executive summary, my financials, my financial projections, copies of my blueprints, and other miscellaneous data. I wanted to pass what they call the weight test. The president came in, the owner of the bank actually, looked at our notebook, saw that it really, we were perceived to have our ducks in order, and said to the vice president of commercial lending, give him whatever he wants. It was that simple. The decision to lend you money is usually made within 30 seconds to 1 minute. The balance of the time is proving you're worthy of the money. Third, collections. I look at, before you start reading the slide, I'll help you get through it. Just stop for a second. The idea here is that it's a lot easier to collect money when your clients are waiting for your services, and a lot more difficult to get that check once you've already completed the project. But one of the biggest problems in construction is we put out the money before we collect the money. Would you all agree? If that's the case, our goal is to stay ahead of cost as much as we can. Now I'm back to the slide. Get as much upfront as possible for materials, for whatever you could justify. Okay? Try to cover your out-of-pocket costs. Get progress payments or draws at the beginning of a phase instead of the completion of a phase if you could get away with it. Or if you can't, create more draws more frequently. Everybody with me so far? You want to match your cost to your revenue as closely as you can. Then collect on change orders at time of signing. Now, your gross profit on a change order should be much higher than your gross profit on a job. Why? You have more administrative costs, more coordination with your vendors, more things could go wrong. So your gross profit, let's say on a job is 20%, on a change order should be 50% to 75%. Okay, some of you will argue with me, and it's a facts and circumstances thing. Okay, now here's the coolest part, which I found out, is create 2 draws from the final one. One on substantial completion, where you've recouped all your costs and maybe even some profit, so that your customer can't hold you hostage on the punch list. Now, when I had my home building business, we did something different than most of the big builders. What we did is 3 days before the closing, we'd have a walkthrough. And we had vendor relationships that all the walkthrough items were a priority. So the house was 100% complete before they moved in. Because you know as well as I do, the movers coming in would chip walls or do something of that nature. So our goal was 100% completion before they even moved in. Our warranty cost compared to the big builders was almost zero. Almost zero. Can you imagine? Most builders can't do that. And the last thing is, even if you do have a punch list, get it done quickly. I know I'm working with a solar company right now. Their biggest problem is collections because they don't go back and clean up the items that were supposed to have been cleaned up at time of asking for the final draw. So they weren't doing two things. They didn't have substantial completion and they didn't close the job out quickly. So those are some of my ideas of how to make collections easier for you. And then have a penalty if you want, if they don't pay on time. So I'm going to deal now with the last one, large backlog. What I say and what David says are going to be two different things, but we're approaching it from two different viewpoints, which is why I like the relationship with Will, Dave, and myself. It's kind of cool. Suppose you're making 20% gross profit. Now that has to cover your fixed cost of, let's say, 120 grand. Your variable costs are 480. Every company is a little differently based on their accounting. The key is know what's variable, know what's fixed. So your break even here is 600 grand. You've got this backlog. So now you're coordinating a backlog. You're trying to keep those customers happy. You've got more demand than you could handle. And maybe you don't have the subcontractor base to handle it. So what about increasing your profit margin so that you're raising your prices so you get a 30% gross profit? Well, what that does is it cuts your break even from 600 to 400. So now you're working less to make the same money. And if you got 500,000 in sales, you'd be working still less and making more money. So great financial stewardship and watching your 8 key indicators can help you make more money with less work. Now, let me tell you one other thing, if you don't mind. Your accountants are misleading you. Accountants break even, as I showed you before, was based on the $30,000 profit, not the $33,000 negative cash flow. When I talk about break even, I want you to consider cash flow break even, which is usually higher than accountants break even, because accountants break even doesn't take into consideration the increase in your accounts receivable, the increase in your inventory, the increase in your front end investment, the increase in your administration, the increase in new equipment. And most CPAs do not think like you, and they don't think in terms of cash flow. So I think the bottom line is your business is hungry. It needs more money to keep operating. And you only have one objective: to make more money. Running a business is no picnic. You all know that as well as I do. In fact, it could be a nightmare. So if you're going to have this nightmare, why not make a lot of money doing it? Okay? And what we do at CFO Project is help you make more money. So I'm going to leave it open for questions right now, but there are two things that I would like you to know. If you'd like to talk to us, contact me here. This is not a sales call. I repeat, it is not a sales call. We will do nothing to try and close you. The second thing is, in the follow-up, Will's going to give you a link to my Make More Money book, The Business Owner's 5-Step Plan for Bringing Home More Cash. So anyone, if you want questions, I'll leave this up for one more second or two, and then I'll turn it over to Will again.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone have questions? Pop it in the chat there. We're keeping an eye on that. Hopefully you see that over there on the side. Where'd it go? There it is. Yeah, I love Jeff's message. It's so counterintuitive that to make more money, Jeff taught me this. As a business owner, the harder you work and the more you work, the less you make. That's the equation. Work harder and more, make less money. And so that is not the answer. And yet the default mode for so many of us is just, okay, things aren't working, let's work harder. Let's work longer. And that is a painful downward spiral. So you need this mindset shift. You need the insights from someone like Jeff who can look at the numbers and then interpret that through the common sense of a business owner. So thank you, Jeff. I'm not seeing any questions pop in here. At the end, FYI, everybody, we're going to give you an opportunity to connect again after this if you want to have a one-on-one discussion. Right now, I want to introduce David Galati. Dave's on the call. Hello, Dave. Thank you for joining us. Dave has been in the home improvement industry for over 2 decades, has tons of C-suite level experience, so C-level experience in a lot of different functions across different organizations, marketing, sales, operations. He's led a $30 million home improvement business that grew 350% in 4 years under his leadership. He's helped hundreds of home improvement contractors, literally. He comes from a very rich background, and so I'm happy to have Dave on the call. Dave's going to address the sales and operations questions that you all shared, and then again, of course, if you have questions on top of that, pop it in the chat. I'm going to share my screen here, Dave, so that you can jump into it. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming. It's my pleasure to be a part of these webinars that we're having, and really appreciate James Hardy and all the work that they do. You guys are a part of an amazing network with an amazing company that really cares about its dealers. All right, so one of the things that, as Will mentioned, I work with emerging brands, helping them scale across all aspects of the business. So marketing, sales, operations, and what that looks like as an integrated approach. And so it's important to look at your business holistically, right? So you've heard some great stuff from the finance side and the marketing side. But one of the things that I do is I work and I have a coach to scale program that I work with my clients on, which is really a holistic approach to making sure that all aspects of the business are working in synergy to effectively scale the business, right? So it's one thing to grow revenue, but unless you're actually growing your profitability and you're and doing that in sync, you're not really scaling. You're just making a bigger headache, right? And so I like to use the phrase building with blocks, right? So as your marketing increases, you've got marketing blocks, you've got sales blocks that need to be kind of paralleled, and then you've got operation, production, and service blocks. So as everything goes, you've got to kind of raise everything up equally. You can't get ahead of yourself or behind, because ultimately you won't effectively scale. And so one of the things that I like to do with these webinars is Hillary kind of gathers some of the data from the feedback that you guys send in on the survey, and just answer a few questions around, really specifically around sales and operations, because the finance and the marketing piece Will and Jeff articulate fairly well. So let's talk a little bit about some of the questions, and I'll walk through some of these answers, and certainly you guys can ask some follow-up questions as we go. And so one of the questions is, how can I close the gap between the initial appointment and closing the sale? So I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind philosophically here that everybody understands, but it's important to give perspective. So we know that the further away from the closing table right? The kitchen table, wherever this sits occurring, the further away we get from that, the lower the percentage to close the sale is, right? We agree on that. It significantly reduces over time, right? So obviously the objective in any home improvement sale is to do the one called close. We know that that isn't always possible. So a couple of things that prevent that is the old-fashioned one-legger, right? And so the first thing that I want to acknowledge here is there's a way to actually get better at one-leggers, all right? Because I'm a firm believer that you can still make sales on a one-legger, all right? So I want to talk a little bit about one-leggers because I think that's the biggest piece there people miss with walking away. And so there's a couple of things. Culturally, it's very hard to get people sometimes to get both decision makers. My rule of thumb is you never force the husband and the wife or the partner or whoever, you never force them to have to be together because you'll lose opportunities to set leads. So you always want to set them even if they're one-legged. Now, you want to on the appointment call to try to say, is anybody else that will be with you? Great, can they be there? You want to try to get that because it's helpful. Mrs. Smith, it's really helpful if both decision makers are there, gives us the opportunity to really make sure we're answering all the questions and serving our customers well in the process. Try to do that. But there will be times either intentional, meaning it's a strategy, right? It gives them an out not to have to buy because they have to talk to their wife or their husband, or it's, hey, he's running late or she's running late and they can't make it. All right, so the one-legger, you always want to, I'm a firm believer that you always want to present price and the product to the one-legger. And the reason why you want to do that is you don't want to insult people, okay? You don't want to put them in a situation, especially if a female, where, you know, they feel unvalidated. Like, what do you mean? You've been here, you spent 2 hours, you're proposing this, but you're not going to give me the price. So here's what you want to do. You want to do two things. You want to do a thermometer close, okay? And you want to do the check-in with them to see if they can do it. Okay, Mrs. Smith, I understand that you need to run this by your husband. I get that. We get that all the time. Fully understandable. Is there a way that we might be able to get him on the phone now? Maybe I could talk him through it and answer any questions he might have, right? You want to try to access him or her somehow, okay? That's number one. No, he's in a meeting, he's unavailable. Oh, okay, I understand it. Well, let me tell you what I know to be true in these kinds of situations. It's very easy for us to come in here and we spend a lot of time together, but it gets lost in the translation. And what we found is a lot of times when the partner or the spouse kind of goes through and reviews proposals with, they just look at price because they don't really have anything to reference it, right? They don't have any understanding of kind of who the person was, what the company was like, the products, are they equal, are they the same? It generally just defaults to the price. And so one of the things I'd love to be able to do here is help you work to describe this to your husband or wife so that we can kind of get a perspective of where we are. Is that fair? Great. So then you do the thermometer close. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, I couldn't wait to get that jerk out of my house, to 10, there's no other way we're not doing business. We're absolutely doing business with this company. Where are we at? Oh, we're at an 8. Okay, that's good. What do we need to do to get to a 10? And then when you ask that question, now you're flushing out any internal objections that they might have, all right? And they're going to tell you something that then you're going to be able to overcome, and whatever that might be, you want to get to a 10. Now, you get this all the time. They're like the Russian gymnast judge. They never give 10s, right? So, well, it's a 9. Okay, well, what do you do get? Well, I don't give 10s. Okay, so 9's as good as it's going to get? Great. So now you're validating that they're good. And then what you're going to do is you're going to give them the opportunity to talk about the things that are important to their spouse. So remember we talked about this feature, this product, and the benefit and how this was going to satisfy your need, right? Right. You're going to check in with them and you're going to allow them the opportunity to help you sell on your behalf. So if you know that you've got them, then you've got a high propensity that when they do come back, and they do actually, it's a valid thing. They're going to present all these different things. They're going to say, well, I like company A better. And let me tell you why. All right. Then the other thing that you're going to do is you're going to offer to come back. Okay. So even though you're going to go through that whole exercise and you can say, look, sometimes this happens and I want you to know that I'm available to come back at any time to go over this with you and your husband. and we can certainly talk about it. So please let me know. All right. Then the other thing you're going to ask is, how soon are you going to make a decision? And whatever they say, it could be a year, 20 years, or tomorrow. You always say, oh, that's soon? And you smile. And the reason why you do that is you want to engage them in a way where you're going to immediately then follow up and say, great. Well, okay, so on Tuesday, great. So can I call you Tuesday afternoon? Is 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock better for you? Well, he doesn't get home until 6. But didn't you say you weren't going to make the decision by then? Well, you know, we're going to, okay, all right. So can I call you at 6? Great, I will call you at 6. So here's what's happening, all right? The gap between the initial appointment and closing the sale, first of all, you're trying to make sure you understand and you're gaining commitment. So it's a one-legger. I went through all of that, and that's the biggest thing that people do, right? You leave the house because they can't make a decision because they got to talk to their spouse, right? Number one thing. So you've got that down. But even if you get to a point where there's 2 of them and they just like, hey, we just can't make the decision. We're getting 2 other estimates. You know, we got to wait. Okay, when are you going to make the decision? Oh, that's soon. And then lock in a follow-up time. And here's the thing. As a salesperson, you've got to put that on your calendar. That's an appointment that you're making. It's a follow-up appointment, okay? Now, again, you always want to try to qualify where you're at. So if we're getting other appointments and we're getting other estimates, I always like to ask the question, so what are you looking to see from other potential vendors, other potential companies that you're not seeing in us or me, okay? Because here's the thing. If you're providing everything that they need, you're meeting all of their expectations, then the chances are they're going to have less and less desire to go somewhere else and get other quotes. So what you want to do is you want to flush out any objections that they might have prior to going and getting other quotes, all right? And so those are just some tips, okay? Is this all inclusive? Absolutely not. Could I do a whole workshop on this? Yes, I could. But the reality is you'll always want to qualify. You always want to set the follow-up before you leave the house. And if it's a one-legger, which is a big part of all of this, you want to try to gauge the interest with the thermometer close. First of all, try to get the other spouse on the phone. If you can't, gauge the interest and then coach up that person to be able to make to be able to help you in selling, right? Okay, so that's number one. How can I teach my staff my sales staff how to prospect? Right, so here's the rub, all right? Home improvement salespeople, they generally really struggle with prospecting, right? We know that. That's why there's a question. So all they want is just give me leads. You know, I expect you, Mr. Company Owner, to provide me all of the best qualified leads, as many as I want, whenever I want, and that's how they act, right? And so if they don't get all the leads they want and they're not called, you know, they tend to complain about it and they'll let you know about it. Separate conversation. But here's how this works around a sales staff, especially if you have different layers of performance. You have seasonality in your business, so you have ebbs and flows in your lead flow. It's all based on the people that get the most inbound leads, the good leads that marketing generates, are the highest performing salespeople. Now, most people will say, well, what's the highest performing sale? Well, it's the one that generates the most revenue. Wrong, it's not. It's actually the one that generates the most revenue for every lead you give them. And that's called ADL, average dollar per lead. And so it's important to understand this. ADL is a function of 2 things: closing percentage times average sale, okay? Closing percentage times average sale. So you're not looking at the person that necessarily sells the highest volume or even has the best closing percentage. You're looking at the person that has the combination of the highest closing percentage times the average sale. That's ADL. As Will said, or average dollar per sit. You can call it a bit different ways. But every time somebody knocks on the door, one of your salespeople knocks on the door and somebody opens it, that's a lead run. So if it's a cancellation, it didn't set or reset, all that, that's part of it. Anytime they run a lead, whether they propose the job, whether, oh, I didn't do it, whatever it is, that's a lead, okay? However many leads they get, it's divided by the revenue they generate from the sum of those leads. So let's use an even number. Say I do 10 leads a week. I'm a salesperson, I run 10 leads a week. I sell $25,000 worth of business. My average dollar per lead is $2,500, okay? If I'm a salesperson and I run 5 leads, but I generate $15,000, I might not be the top performing salesperson, but my ADL is $2,750. And so I would rather have the person, if I had one lead, all I got is one lead, who's going to run the lead? It's not the guy or the gal that has the highest revenue or the highest closing percentage. It's the guy or the gal that has the highest ADL. And so we need to first understand the hierarchy of lead assignment is the highest ADL salespeople get the most leads. So if you have a salesperson that doesn't have a high ADL and there's not a lot of leads for them, then they have to learn how to prospect. Why? Because if they can prospect and get warm leads and referral leads, those tend to close at a higher rate. Those tend to boost your ADL. If I can go out and get 3 good referrals, and I know they're warm leads because they're direct referrals, and they're in the calendar, and I knocked on the door, so it's counted as a lead, and I can close all 3 of those at a high rate, my ADL can go up. And so my background in training salespeople is to have the lower ADL people, sometimes these are the new people that are starting out, that understand that a part of them building their business is understanding that prospecting is an essential part of it. All right, to answer the question, how do we teach that? Well, we teach that by its basic sales training. Go out, ask them how to ask for referrals. So any of the company leads that they're getting that they're selling, Mr. Smith, are there any of your neighbors on the street that could use our services? All right, get the names. Can I get their names? Go into Chamber of Commerce, BNI, any of these networking groups, Rotary Club, the PTA. Here's where the mindset has to be. They have to be wearing your shirt wherever they are, and they have to be talking to people about what they do, and they have to ask people who they know. And if you have a good reputation, my gut tells me all of you do, or you wouldn't be on this call, then you need to leverage that reputation and have the salespeople know the expectation, especially if they're not the top performing people, is that they're going to generate personal leads. Now, my gut tells me all of the people that are your top performers from an ADL perspective, not only are they good with the leads that you give them, but they probably all already have a bunch of their own leads. Why? Because they understood that referrals are a big part of growing and scaling a business over time. So you teach them by basically understanding that when they're not running a lead and they need more leads, they have to be a brand ambassador. They have to go out and they have to promote your business, and they have to tell people about what you do, and they have to ask people who they know. And it's a commitment that they need to make. They can't just take the shirt off and act like they're a secret agent, or you just can't do it. You've got to be a brand evangelizer. Right. And then the other piece of this, role playing is key. You've got to role play. I did a little mini role play with you there. You've got to get into uncomfortable situations with them. If you're not role playing with your salespeople, they'll never be successful. Why? Because they need practice. It's like anything else. And here's what I know everybody knows on this call. If you can do well in role playing with your peers, you'll kill it in front of the client, the prospect. It's easy. Okay. The hard part is doing it in front of people when they can laugh at you. Customer's never going to laugh at you. Okay. They may not buy from you, but they're never going to laugh at you. Right. So these are important things to understand. So again, high level, some of the things we work on in our coaching program is really the nitty gritty, the granular. All right, I've got 11 minutes. I'm going to go to the next slide. How do I properly train my installers? Okay, well, first of all, you've got to have a training program. All right, so in a training program is a written book, manual, online, ERP, whatever it might be, handwritten, anything that outlines all of your operational processes and procedures, okay? It has to be in writing. If you don't have it in writing and it's just kind of the old kind of transfer of knowledge from one set of ears to the other, it's never gonna work, all right? So you're never gonna, and then you have to have a plan that's systematic, okay? An installer needs to be trained. If they aren't already trained, so there's two layers. They need to be trained on your systems and processes, which takes a minimum of 2 to 4 weeks. And if they have no experience in the industry, then they need to be a helper with an installer for 2 to 3 months at a minimum, okay? And that's fast tracking it. That's assuming you have all of those other ducks in a row, right? If you're just bringing somebody in and expecting that they learn, you're not going to do it. So part of this is, if you're a larger company, you need to have a production manager that understands part of their role is training new installers. If you're smaller and it's something where as an owner, you're doing it, you've got to take on that responsibility. But the first thing that you do is you have to have a training system and processes in place. Processes and procedures. Okay, processes are a larger overview of how we get work done, and procedures are specific things within those processes that need to get done to execute at a level. All right, and then so that's number one. And then you've got to inspect what you expect. There has to be a level of accountability, a culture of accountability in your organization, meaning that this is how we do it. It's not negotiable. And then from there, if you're not doing those things, then you can't be a part of what we're doing. And so a lot of times, and this happens in sales too, is home improvement companies will go out and they'll hire experienced people. And they do that because, hey, I don't have to train them. They already know what they're doing. Well, sometimes they may know how to bang a nail or jackhammer or something, they know the task, but do they really know how to execute within your plan? And they will only do that if you have a plan. And so sometimes you hire bad habits, okay? Bad habits are things that will suck the life out of your company because you're making assumptions that they're good habits, but they're bad habits, okay? So it's a culture of training, it's a culture of accountability, and you've got to have things systemized and set up. How do I streamline my operations process from sale order to installation? Okay, the first thing that you have to have is you have to have a good CRM, okay? So you have to have a scenario where you're running your CRM. A lot of you have these, contractor CRMs. They're all over the place. i360, Builder Trend, Job Nimbus, Market Sharp, right? But here's what I know to be true about 95% of home improvement contractors, and I've dealt with hundreds of them over the years. They use their CRMs to anywhere from 30 to 50% efficiency. So they may take one little piece of the CRM and that's what they use, and everything else manual and kind of duct tape and bale and wire, and it's not fully synced. You need to look at your tech stack or your tech deck, and you need to look at from the time somebody makes an inquiry, whether that's a web form from your website or a phone call or a text or a chat, that initial raw communication right through the time that it's reconciled in your QuickBooks or your Xero account as a seamless thing where you take your workflow and you analyze it step by step by step, with the objective being there's one point of data entry and there's one point of data exit, and it ends up circling back so it gets back into the marketing funnel after it's executed the sale, so that you can do what Jeff talks about, is get the most revenue per customer that you can get and get that repeat business, right? Especially if you have multiple product lines, right? So you can only replace the windows once, but you got the siding, you got the roof, you got internal stuff that you can do, HVAC, you've got remodel, all of that stuff. And if you're doing a bunch of different services, then that's even more paramount than if you were just a single service provider, okay? So you've got to step back and look at everything that you're doing from a workflow perspective, grid it out, and then look for the gaps that you have where there's a disconnect, and you've got to be able to utilize the technology that you already have to its fullest. And then once you do that, you can identify a couple of key pieces that you might need some bolt-on parts to. And this is where we work really well in trying to help our clients get the most of it, and really squeeze that out so it's fully synchronized. All right. So the other part of this, the last question is, how do I scale my installation staff for an increase in sales production? So the goal is, how do you scale your team? And so here's the one thing that home improvement contractors miss 99% of the time. They don't understand the idea of building a bench, all right? They don't understand the idea that they always have to be hiring and recruiting, always, 365 days a year. What happens is most home improvement contractors wait until there's a surge or a need in their business, and then they desperately go out and try to fill a spot with the first person that fogs the mirror. Okay. And then what happens is, because there's no intentionality, these people are not properly vetted. They're not properly trained. They don't understand the expectations, and they're coming in and it's rushed. And you have high turnover, and you have low productivity, and you have all sorts of issues. I've seen this time and time again. As an owner of the business, one of the key deliverables that you can do that's actually working on your business is the idea that you are building a bench of people that want to come work for you, so that when you grow and you add blocks along the way, you can predictably hire and already have people waiting to come and work for you when the time is right. So what does this mean? It means you have to have an intentional hiring process. You need to set up and design all of your own hiring templates. You need to use a platform that will allow you to do that at scale. Indeed has a great platform. There's plenty of other ones that work well, where you're setting up pages and profiles. You've got your JDs all lined up. You're constantly putting ads in, and you're looking for the top people that then you vet. You bring them through multiple interview processes. You have one day a week where it's just, hey, this is an open house. We're going to have lunch, and any potential candidates that want to be part of it, this is where they just show up and we have lunch with them. Whether we're hiring them or not, they get to know us. We get to know them. And then what happens is you get enough velocity, and I've seen it. It works like amazing, that when you actually begin to need people, sales, operation, internal, support, service, whatever it might be, you have these people ready to go. And they step in and they know what to expect because you've spent time with them. The biggest thing with this is Stephen Covey talks about the 4 quadrants of time, right? The number one thing that any owner in a business needs to spend is the quadrant that is not urgent but important. Okay, all right. So the time you spend in things that aren't putting fires out, but are critically important, and building a bench and having a sustainable long-term recruiting strategy is one of those number one kind of things that you can do. All right. So you've got to find a way to carve the time off, build a culture. There's systems and processes you can put that will streamline this, but you got to get away from just-in-time hiring and hiring the first person that shows up because you're desperate. You'll never scale that way. You'll have constantly be going up and down. And I've seen it. What happens is, hey, we got a spike in sales. Oh, we need production capacity. Let's go hire production people. All right, well, now we've got a backlog. Our sales is dropping. It's like a roller coaster. And you looked at what Jeff showed you. Scaling is like this. It's a ski ramp, right? It's a ramp up, and then you get to that point where you get some of that hockey stick growth. But all that's based on putting the right systems and processes together. All right.
Fantastic,
That's what I got.
Dave.
Any
Thank
questions,
you.
comments?
Yep, we're at the bottom of the hour here. I want to leave it open just for a moment. Does anyone have any questions for Dave regarding sales and operations? Pop it into the chat. I'll leave it open here for a minute. Thank you, Dave. So much wisdom there. If you haven't picked up on it yet, we're totally focused on the long game here. This is not just the short game. Yes, we've got to play the short game, but if you're not playing the long game, you're just creating a bigger nightmare. It's not pretty. So thank you, Dave. I don't see anything in the chat. Guys, if you want to learn more, we're going to send you an email that's a free 30-minute strategy session with our team. If you want some one-on-one help, we're happy to set that up. You'll get an email here from Hillary in the near future. We'll also send you Jeff's book and the link to his, if you want to talk to Jeff. We'll also send you the unique value guide and how you can differentiate from your competitors. How can you charge more money and still win jobs? And that's the key to Jeff's point, which is how can you make more profit? If your perceived value in the marketplace is greater, you can charge more money and people will still want to work with you. And that allows you to have more margin, which allows you to hire people, bring in expertise, do all of the stuff that needs to be done to grow your business.